Okay, so what we're doing with today's video, I have graded the SAQs from the test the other day, and some did well, some not as well, but that's okay. Excuse me. But I felt we would go over it, and I'm going to review this. This is one that we've looked at during one of our seminars on writing. I've changed the background. That little, it had the Ace of Hearts. I just couldn't take it anymore, so I changed that. And I've added some things to it to reflect the SAQ that we took. So once again, and I'm hoping you have a chance to read this, we're looking at, this is from the 2015 framework, but it talks about short answer questions and what you're supposed to do. And the big thing is that we're trying to talk to you about your analyzing evidence, interpreting documents. You would look at the JAS thing as a document, a primary source, create and defend an argument. This is the huge thing. You are not giving just information. You are creating an argument. And that's where some of you, in DBQs, LEQs, short answer questions, it's not just information, it's the argument. You've got to answer the question, okay? And then it may be compare and contrast. All right, so if we look at it, we've got to keep this in mind, the ACE. Now, not every question fits this framework perfect. But this part does. You just have to answer the question. What's the question? Ask yourself, did I answer the question? That's the first thing you got to do. And then after that, you want to do these things. So cite is you want to describe your claim. You may want to bring something from the poster that you see. They do talk about be careful not to quote too much and things. And then expand on it. These two are when I put up there, what are your details? What are your examples? And these are the things that get you the point. Most everybody can answer it. What do you do? Do you add names, events, organizations, and how they relate to your answer? That's what you got to look for. All right? Depend on the prompt. This component requires you to directly answer the question by identifying a specific historic claim, general historical assertion, or interpretive analysis. So, if you're talking about civil rights movement, you would talk about Jim Crow laws. That's what would get you that. You would talk about Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act. You would talk about poll taxes, literacy tests. Those are the things that get you this point in here when you finish the answer with some examples and stuff. All right, some of this I'm going to go through. The cite, depending on the prompt, you need to directly answer the question, a specific historical claim, as we said, assertion or analysis. The definition or description should contain specific factual information, evidence. We're going to look at some examples today of ones that just spinning your wheels, not going anywhere. You're saying the same stuff. Some of us, to be quite honest, are just writing the question down 3 times. It's not good. Remember, this is mainly, we'll know for sure next Friday, this is what your exam is going to look like. Okay? You need to know, is it going to be continuity change over time? Is it interpretation? You got to look at all those things. Snag a word or a phrase from what you see. Can't be much though, but a word or a phrase. Somebody did a good one on that to some degree. We'll look at that in a minute. All right, expand. Bring in outside information, outside details. All right, the explanation should connect or tie back to the answer. Don't answer one way, but then give proof for the exact opposite. You got to make sure that you are giving material to back up what your answer is. Okay? So, briefly explain one important difference between northern regional economy and the southern regional economy in the period from 1800 to 1850. So, they're going to talk about the difference. You got industry in the north, manufacturing, in the south, agrarian. Okay? They're going to cite, this is the specific example, the Lowell system, which is the early factories up north. The south had the cash crop with plantations such as cotton. So right there, you've got your examples. Right there, I'm going to be honest, they're going to probably get the point as it is. But then they're going to add on to it. They're going to talk about how the factories did wage earning, free labor class. You had to pay people, whereas the South had that enslaved people that were basically free labor. So they're adding something to it. But I'm going to be honest, right there is probably enough to get the point. So when we look at this one, sectional conflict over slavery, they're going to talk about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. In here, they're going to say what the Nebraska Territory, how it's split up. Then they're going to go into a little bit more about how it expands beyond the Missouri Compromise and stuff. Once again, that's almost enough to get the point right there. They're just going to add some more. But I'm hoping that you see that it's got to be some details. And you know what? You may have to sit there and think about it. You may have to brainstorm real quick. You got to do that. So these are general SAQ guidelines. Do not skip lines or double line. Do not indent. Do not write an introduction or conclusion. Start with your answer. Your first sentence should be the answer. Do not repeat the question. We have people that do that because I guess you don't know what to write. Do not repeat the question. Just answer it, okay? Writing complete sentences, no bullet points or sentence fragments. We do a pretty good job on that. Complete each task in order, A, B, C. Now, they're not going to take off if you don't. They're not going to do that. As long as you clearly put, I'm doing B. Remember how we talked about A, B, and C out to the left-hand side. If you do B, C, A, but you don't write B, C, A, they're going to grade the first one as A. And so guess what? All three of them are going to be wrong. Recommend to answer in order of the most confidence first. So if there's one that you know really, really well, you may want to do that one first. But you've got to make sure you write that letter. Excuse me. Be explicit. Specific, factual, historical evidence. Avoid answering only in generalizations. The word that, them, everything, thing. What is the thing? Who is them? What is that? You got to be specific. That's where you get the points. Do not quote words or phrases from the excerpts. 1 or 2 words is okay. No sentences. Don't do. They want to know your argument. They know what's on the paper that they've given you. They put it there. Unnecessary phrases to avoid. You don't have to put according to the historian, as seen in the excerpt, graph, image, as written, mentioned by. You don't have to do that. You would do that on DBQs and LEQs. You're not having to do that. Use active verbs and active voice. You're making an argument. Direction and syntax play an important role in establishing a confident historical claim and assertion, in addition to developing concise responses. So, Europeans brought over diseases to the Americas, and it had an impact on the native populations. What's better is contagious European diseases decimated native populations. It's more specific. You may even want to use the 90%. You can use those if you know them well. If you know the specific disease, you could do that. Smallpox. All right? This is one I brought in just today from Tom Ritchie, because he's got some of the same stuff. But what I really like about his is this one. This is not about right versus wrong answers, but about valid versus invalid answers. Okay? People can have different answers, and both answers could be right. And that's what you have to look at. So I put that up there just because that's what he says, and he's one of the head readers and all that stuff. Okay? The best way to answer the SAQ is to be direct and to the point. But your answer must be supported with factual evidence that relates to the question, what it's asking, and your answer. Be as specific as possible with your facts. Hopefully by now you see that I'm talking about facts, details, examples. That's what I'm trying to get out of today's lesson. All right, excuse me. Each part of the question, of course, so you know there's 3 parts, can be fully answered in about 2 to 3 sentences. Not one. Can't do it in one. 2 to 3 sentences. You have 23 lines to answer an entire question. So question number 1 has A, B, C. All that should fit on 23 lines. You don't get any more paper than that. But the most successful SAQ answers use about half the page. So if yours looks like that for all 3, you're screwed. I hate to tell you. Writing 1 sentence for each part will weaken your chances for earning all 3 points. Can't do it in 1 sentence. You do not have to answer the questions in order, but you might make sure you label them. If you only know part of it, answer what you know. And of course, it's an all or none thing. You either get the point or you don't. But I'll be honest with you. So you get 3 points per question. If you get 2 out of the 3, you can get a 3 or 4. You got to get all 3 out of 3 on a couple of them. But 2 out of the 3 get you a 3 or 4. So if you do that, you're doing great. All right? Now, showing you this example, because this is what you're going to have. Now, it's going to be a little bit different. We'll know Friday. But this is typical. So what they'll do, this is from last year's. They're going to give you an excerpt from this person, an excerpt from this person, and then in here they're asking you for differences between the 2. So the answer is right here. This is your answer. You just have to bring stuff from here and stuff from here and tie it all together. So briefly describe one major difference between Crane and Zagari's historical interpretations of the immediate impact of the American Revolution on women. It's in there somewhere. Then you explain an event and then another event. This one is with Crane, this one supports Zagari's. So that's where you come up with your outside stuff, okay? This is similar to the one I gave you the other day. It's going to be a picture, a poster, or something like that. Based on this, you answer it. Briefly describe one historical perspective expressed in the image. So this is moving out west. We talk about the push-pull factors. That's what you would use in something like this. Briefly explain how one specific event or development in the period contributed to the process depicted in the image. You could talk about the gold rush, the 49ers, California, Sutter's Mill. But see how I'm bringing in examples, specific examples. Briefly explain one specific historical effect in the period from 1844 to 1890 that resulted from the process depicted in this image. So what takes place? We got westward expansion. We got imperialism. You could bring in the Mexican-American War. Of course, you could bring in new lands, sectionalism because of free soil versus slave labor. All those are things you could use in that example. And then the third one is just going to be, what do you know? It's going to be a simple question. Answer A, B, and C. Confine your response to the periods from 1607 to 1754, so it's giving you a time period. And then you just have to answer these 3 questions. Now on this one, what they did last year is you had to answer this one, you had to answer this one, and then you could pick between these 2. Now, probably would not have something like that this year because we're not going to get into the Great Society. That's with Lyndon B. Johnson. That's going to be period 8. So we won't get there. But it shows you an example. So you would know a similarity between the 2, a difference, and then a reason for a difference. And remember, you want to make sure that you read ahead of time. Sometimes they will, like this one here, says briefly explain one reason for a difference between the New Deal and Great Society programs. Well, it didn't say as mentioned in B. So you could do a difference here and then do a totally different difference here. However, sometimes they will say as explained in B. And I have had students who are like, and I didn't know how to answer that question. I did A and B fine, but then when it came to the C part, I didn't know it. I wish I'd done something different for B, because that way I could have got all three of them. So make sure you read ahead of time. All right? So let's talk about the one we did just the other day. So it says Tales of the Jazz Age. You've got people playing music up here. You got people dancing. And it says by the author of The Beautiful and Damned, F. Scott Fitzgerald. So this is a book. It is not damning F. Scott Fitzgerald. It is talking about a book that he has written called The Beautiful and the Damned. And what he is talking about in that other book is the Jazz Age. Remember, F. Scott Fitzgerald did not like the Roaring Twenties. So we need to look at that. So let's look at what some of us did. First of all, here's what we're looking for. Explain the point of view reflected in the image. You know, here's the thing, gang. We've been working on point of view from like the first week, maybe the second week. A point of view is how someone looks at something. Do they agree? Yes or no? Are they happy about it? Yes. Are they mad about it? No. That's their point of view. That's how you answer point of view. So explain the point of view reflected in the image. So we look back at the image. And what you must ask is this. Is that demonstrating that they're happy about the Jazz Age? Now, 96% of you said yes. It is, everybody's having a great time. They're dancing. They got music. They're drinking. Everything's happy. That would be the point of view. Now, one of you, and I will be honest, this is how I would have gone if I had written it myself. When you say, by the author of The Beautiful and Damned, F. Scott Fitzgerald, that means Fitzgerald is not happy about the Tales of the Jazz Age. But here's the deal. As long as you can explain it, support it, you're okay. All right? Provide one piece of evidence from the era of the Jazz Age and explain how it supports the interpretation. So if you went with what most of you did, you would just say everybody's having a great time, new type of music, plenty of money, everybody is dressed up. It shows, you could bring in the flappers. You could bring in, everybody's dressed, the stock market's great, everybody's making money. These guys may be robber barons who own industry, and they're doing great. Therefore, they're able to go out and rent or buy tuxedos and do stuff. Okay? So then, if you went that way, then here you would go opposite of that. This here supports what you thought. This here refutes. Refutes means to go against. It means to take examples and go against what that person said happened. So now when I look at it, I got to find problems with it. So what I would do is I would say that the morality of the country has gone down. We have prohibition, but yet people are still drinking. We have speakeasies. We have gangsters. Bring Al Capone, 18th Amendment, Volstead Act. All those are details that you're bringing in to refute that this is a good time. They're having a good time, now, don't get me wrong. But is that good for America? F. Scott Fitzgerald would say that's not a good thing. So let's look at the examples. So this is A, letter A, differing points. So this is one of your classmates and this is the other one. Now, each one of them is right, but each one of them looks at it differently. This one says the point of view that is reflected in the image is the bad side of the Jazz Age. The text says the damned Fitzgerald, which shows that they did not like him. Now, they're not, in this thing here, that's the name of his book. So they're not saying, damn John F. Fitzgerald. They're not saying that. I mean, F. Scott Fitzgerald, not John F. Kennedy. All right? But you're close. You're saying the jazz thing is bad. The image shows some bad things happening, like the bottom picture of something going in the woman's throat to show their disapproval. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this right here, this may take your point away. I gave you the point here, but let's look back at it. This is not jabbing something down somebody's throat. The reason I didn't take off for it is because the picture is on a computer screen. Hopefully it would be better when you take it, but I don't know. This is a cigarette extender. Women used to wear it, it'd be about this long, and they put a cigarette at the end, and that's how they smoked it. And that was back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That was a very popular thing to do. The reason being, now think about why this is. One, it's fashionable. But two, cigarettes are nasty. So when you smoke them, all that smoke comes up in your face and hair, and you smell like cigarette. Oh my God, it's terrible. So they would use these extenders to keep the smoke away from them. But of course, then it was like the thing to do. So that is actually, they're having a great time. They're not throwing anything down your throat. But I think you would see that if you had it bigger. Now, let's look at the other one, which is opposite. Right here, this person here says that F. Scott Fitzgerald's point of view is that the jazz age is bad. That is their point of view. That's good. And they've got some stuff to back it up. I don't know if that's enough to get the point. This one here is great. It's great. And a lot of you got this first A, 6 points for it. The point of view on this image has a positive view on the jazz age. Right there, they answered the question, what is the author's point of view of the jazz age? It is a positive view. Right there you go. It's a positive view. They answered the question. The image has flappers. Right there is a detail. And people dancing, giving America a sense of community within itself. This image also portrays that during the jazz era, everyone was happy with everything during that time. Now, look at that. Everyone was happy with everything during that time. Who's everyone? What's everything? So we need to get a little more specific. But that time and all races got together with the Harlem Renaissance. Now, that's where they bring it back in. That's how they got all their points. They got the point. Once again, another detail that's not mentioned in the picture. So they bring that in. Did the races get along better? Yes. Was it great? No. And that might have been the thing to add on. Did the races got along together better than they had before? Not as good as we want, but because of the Harlem Renaissance, that helped. All right? So you see how they are different points of view, but at least each one gives them a point of view. Here, Fitzgerald does not like the jazz age. Here, he does. Okay? Now, let's look at two that don't quite do the point of view. Okay? Now, this is all this person wrote for A. The point of view reflected in the image is when music and dancing came into popularity in the 1920s and 1930s. Does that give a point of view? No. What they've given us there is information. Music and dancing came into popularity in the 1920s and 30s. That's just information. They're not making an argument. They're not telling us what is his point of view. From that, can you tell us his point of view? No. Can't do it. All right? Now, this is a tad bit better. This person did get a few points on the test. This will remember, with one sentence you can't get points. The point of view on the image represents the jazz age. No. If you don't like the jazz age, is that the point of view? If you do like it, is that the point of view? You got to tell us. He liked it or he didn't like it. Okay? The image shows that things that Americans became obsessed with during this time. Drinking, partying, and out-of-character behaviors. Now, they almost brought it back here. I'm going to tell you, they're not going to get the point on the College Board exam. They did get some points for our test, though, because they talk about obsessed with, during this time, consumerism. That helps them a little bit. and then of course, out of character behaviors. But, I'm telling you, on the College Board, they wouldn't get it simply because they didn't put a point of view. Got to have that. You got to answer the question. All right, so this is B. Provide one piece of evidence from the era of the Jazz Age and explain how it supports the interpretation of the image. So I think all these are, they supported the Jazz Age. You know, they went with F. Scott Fitzgerald supported the Jazz Age. So, the Harlem Renaissance, which began during the 1920s, was a time where African Americans expressed themselves socially and culturally. They did this mainly through jazz music, which is the point of view of the image. Jazz music is not the point of view of the image. Fortunately for them, that's not the question here. The Harlem Renaissance really helped unite the world and eliminate some of the racial cruelty that used to exist. Now, the key thing is that they've got Harlem Renaissance, African Americans, took away racial cruelty. So that's going to help them. Do you see how this point of view, I don't know where we're losing our point of view stuff in here. But at least they've got some other details. Okay? They've got how this supports a positive view of the Jazz Age. Now, what would have made it better? Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, things like that. Cotton Club, things like that would have made it even better. Now, this is missing something. It's 2 sentences. It's the same question. Let's see how they answered it. From the era of the Jazz Age, there was new music introduced called jazz. Jazz was music developed by African Americans. In the image, it shows them dancing to the music. Now, first of all, I don't know if they're saying African Americans are dancing. There are no African Americans in this picture. None. But even if you go past that, they don't bring anything to the table. There's nothing, the word jazz age, that's used in the picture. That's not an outside detail. That's not a specific event. So you don't have any of that. There's nothing outside that they've brought in. So that's not going to get any points. Okay? All right, C, provide one piece of evidence from the era of the Jazz Age and explain how it refutes the interpretation in the image. So, the one student who went with against it, okay, their B would be supporting the against it. Their C would be how the Jazz Age wasn't bad. Everybody else that did it, F. Scott Fitzgerald supported it. B, what were some good things? Now the C is going to be refuting. What were things taking place during this time that were against that the Jazz Age was a good time? Prohibition during the Jazz Age refutes the image. Speakeasies were formed but were very illegal during this era. This would lead to trouble and consequences for people who took part of it. People who supported Prohibition were not fans of the Jazz Age, the Jazz era, and how it promoted the consumption of alcohol. There you go. You've got Prohibition, you got speakeasy, illegal. So, you know what would have been a little bit better through the 18th Amendment or the Volstead Act? Speakeasies were formed but were very illegal, leading to gangsters such as Al Capone. This will lead to trouble and consequences for people who took part of it. People who supported Prohibition were not fans of the Jazz era. You could talk about radio evangelists, Billy Sunday, and things like that, who promoted the consumption of alcohol. So I think this is enough to get the point. We want to make sure, we want that reader to read it and be like, no problem, that's a point. Here's what takes place. In the reading things, you have this person reading, this person reading. All right? If that person gives the point, that person gives the point, boom, you've got the point. If they give the point, the other one doesn't, now it has to go to an arbiter. Somebody who decides who was right. We don't want to do that. We want point, move on. That's what we got to have. Okay? So, let's look at this. These are all things, details associated with the Jazz Age that you could have used. So, Harlem Renaissance, The Lost Generation with Gertrude Stein. Consumerism. Advertisement, some people say advertisement. buying on time or on credit. Langston Hughes, The Struggles of the African American Middle Class. Blackface, somebody did use that, that was pretty good. The Scopes Trial, which talked about the difference between being conservative and more liberal. Prohibition, speakeasies, moonshiners, the Volstead Act, gangsters, Al Capone, jazz, Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong. Other forms of entertainment, you could have talked about the radio, movies, sports, could have mentioned the Cotton Club. Flappers, women's rights, Margaret Sanger, W.B. Du Bois. Remember how the NAACP and Du Bois were helping that middle class African Americans, the artists and stuff. You could talk about black nationalism with Marcus Garvey. You could talk about the conservative radio evangelists like Billy Sunday. All of these would have been examples you could have used to bring in those specific details. Okay? So, we did okay. I just want us to do really, really well on these things. We're going to start doing more short answers. I'm going to be sending you YouTube videos of short answers and stuff. But you've got to sit down. You've got to become better writers. Now, you've got the break of a lifetime. We don't know for sure. But you know that you won't have to do both the LEQ and the DBQ and 3 short answer questions. You know that. So if you struggle writing, you just have to focus like a laser on these short answer questions. It's the chance of a lifetime. Because think about this, if you're struggling with short answer questions, how are you going to do on DBQs or LEQs? It's going to be tough. But if you can make yourself use this method and use these details, these outside evidence, you got a chance. And I don't know if I've told you guys, I thought I said at the beginning. Of course, you got to be over the 50% and stuff. But I think last year I said, if 80% pass, I take everybody out to dinner. Wherever we want to go, we'll go out to dinner. Hopefully that'll happen. That will be a bill I will enjoy paying, but you got to have 80%. Can it be done? Yes. Yes. But, we've got to have some people really excel, and the people that are down here have really got to step up their game. All right? Make sure you watch this. Hopefully you took notes. If not, I would go back and just jot down some notes, because you know what? Here's the thing. We've gone over this before. We still got people doing 1-sentence answers. So what does that tell you? All right.